Hey, it's Matt Roush,
And Mike Brennan.
and we're back with another segment of the M Squared TechCast here at podcastdetroit.com, MITechTV.com, and wherever fine podcasts are available.
That's it. And we have with us from New York, Kelli List-Wells, who's with the STEAM Leadership Alliance. Welcome.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about, first off, this may be the first time that anyone's heard of the STEAM Leadership Alliance. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, terrific. So first of all, thank you for having me today. The STEM Leadership Alliance, it's a collaboration that is really focusing on how to integrate STEM. So STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, it tends to be this acronym that's thrown around. So what we have done is we've brought together the major STEM organizations, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, NASA, business, nonprofit organizations, and school systems to really start to think about that transformation of changing that word from STEM or STEAM or all of those other buzzwords to something that has a much more connected approach to it. So that's how this all started, and we're really excited about joining the show today.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about, now one of the examples I have on my list here that I'm looking at is a sample of the integrated, you got STEAM or STEM district occurring in District 6 in New York City. What's that all about?
Yes, so when we've started this journey, District 6 in New York City was one of these great examples to say that we didn't want just that word STEM to be this acronym, and basically having everything taught in silos and STEM being this buzzword. We were thinking of it beyond an after-school program or some activity that happened during the day, because when it happens that way, it really becomes very isolated. It's not truly about the equity and access. So District 6 took a very different approach. What they ended up doing is they worked with City College, they worked with the school system itself, and then they brought in some of their nonprofit partners as well and said, let's really have a conversation to say, we want STEM to be very grassroots. We don't want this to be forced upon any school, and we don't want it to be done in isolation. So we went through a training process to say, let's define what is integrated STEM. And what that basically means is that you're not looking at science being just science and math being just math. You look to find those authentic connections. You look at ways on how do the subjects, so a student who's in science class, they're not just doing math as the M in measurement, but they're really doing the fundamentals of mathematics, that deeper understanding that they need. And they're not looking at technology just as a tool, but they're looking at it as a resource. And then they're saying, well, how do we also incorporate English and social studies and art and all of those other subject areas? So that was the whole process that we started with District 6, is we started from the very grassroots, worked across with the schools. They came up with their own action plans, and then we rolled that up to say, now let's look at how do we create a vision and a mission for the district as a whole to say we are not just going to be a STEM school system, but we are really going to be this integrated district.
All right, tell me a little bit about District 6. What part of the city is it, and what kind of sort of socioeconomic area is it?
So District 6 is in New York City. It's in the Washington Heights, so it covers part of Harlem. It's a very diverse school system there. There's approximately 39 schools that range from pre-K all the way up to grade 12. And again, you're seeing there's also a lot of diversity that is happening within the system there. You're also seeing a change of diversity because where you used to have a very large population from the Dominican Republic, it's now transferred to other groups. So it's become a real melting pot in terms of the community as well as the socioeconomics that exists there.
Interesting.
And then you also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
We also worked with the Cincinnati, looks like facilities support system, where it saved $15 million. Talk about that example.
So in my previous role, I worked for a major corporation. And when we look at how business can work and support educators, we look at this from a variety of ways. It's not just going in and doing tutoring or mentoring or going in and cleaning a park or cleaning a school playground. We look at these as, how do you leverage the resources? How do you leverage that mind power that business actually has? So for the example in Cincinnati, one of the things that the company did at the time was worked alongside the facilities manager of Cincinnati Public Schools. And they said we had several buildings. There was a very significant change in terms of demographics, students moving out of the city. So they leveraged the opportunity for the facilities manager to work alongside the facilities manager of the school district to really come up with a way to say, how do we change these plans? How do we look at buildings? How do we change that whole facility structure there? And that's where that cost savings came in. But again, when business goes in, business tends to think of it, let's go in, we're going to do tutoring and mentoring, but there's a world of opportunities. And right now, what we really need business to also thinking about is, how do we help educators during this new world of learning? And we just happened to hear from Lynn, who had, talking about the shift of online learning. But a lot of the K-12 systems, they don't have that system and structure put in place. They need training. They need professional development. It's not always intuitive what to do when you're used to having a classroom of students, and now all of a sudden you have 25, 30 plus faces that may be looking at you on a screen, but then not all students have the access to technology. So
well, that's one of the things. That's one of the things I neglected to mention with Lynn, and my boss is going to kill me for forgetting it. But LTU since 2000 has given every undergraduate student a laptop loaded with all of the software they're going to need for their courses. And when you have students with that kind of technology behind them, occasionally there are connectivity issues, but there's never a hardware or software issue because the kids come into school having that technology with them. I would imagine in a diverse urban school district, that could be a little bit tougher to cross that barrier. What have you done for that? What have you done to ensure students have technology at home?
So many of the school districts, as well as funders and supporters, have donated to help students have that technology. So whether it's using Chromebooks, whether it's iPads, but there's been a significant push across the country to get those tools into students' hands. The trouble, though, that goes along with that at the same time is that educators need to have support on how do you use this technology. So there's certain schools that have done this in an amazing way. There's a school actually in New York City, and what their whole learning platform before this even happened was students were actually taking their courses, they were creating their labs online. If they were in their math class, the teacher was teaching the subject, and she had all of the students' laptops so she could see on another screen to make sure no one was doing something they shouldn't be doing, and they were extremely focused. But it also was able to provide students with those skills that if they weren't understanding a particular topic, the teacher could assign an assignment for them to go deeper. So there was all of that technology learning that was happening, so they were ahead of the game. But now we have thousands and thousands and thousands of teachers that are sitting there saying, I have to teach this online course, but they don't necessarily have the in-depth knowledge and understanding. And so we've gone back to teaching in a very traditional way in terms of that siloed approach. So you have math being taught, English being taught, social studies being taught, so on and so forth. But the problem with that is we want these kids to think about integrated STEM because this is how the world works. When you start around and integrate it and you start to connect those topics together, what happens is students become problem solvers, critical thinkers. They start to think outside the box and say, how do we change what we know, and how do we make the world a better place? So I think there's a lot that needs to still happen and that still needs to occur during this very challenging time. But at the same time, this is an opportunity to really provide that professional development and the knowledge and skills that teachers need. We can get behind them and help them as they're learning on these new platforms.
All right, we got about 3 or 4 minutes left, so I guess it's time to, we could talk a little bit about the Erie system supports.
Yeah, so in other districts too, some of the work that we've also done is we've also looked at, again, this is going back to business to say it's beyond just thinking about in terms of tutoring or mentoring or those short skills that are needed. Instead, it's thinking the long term. So one of the other activities was the school system in Erie was looking at a new IT system. They had an old mainframe and they really needed to upgrade it. And that was a way that business could actually work alongside with the school system, not to make the decision for them, but to help them to understand the products, the technology, the needs, bringing that all together. That's where the magic happens, is when we look at this to say it's not an us versus them, or that we're only looking at test scores for student performance. It's when the school system can be embraced by looking at all of the needs that the system faces. So whether it's technology and leveraging businesses, leveraging their expertise, or colleges and universities leveraging their expertise to work with school system. When it comes to professional development for educators, which is an area that is highly underfunded, that they need support. So even when you bring in the technology, you have to do some additional training. School districts in Stamford, Connecticut, for example, did a boot camp, a technology boot camp for educators, those that weren't quite feeling comfortable with using it. So there's a lot of ways that we can empower educators as they think about these new tools and how to help them and support them in this very changing environment, which again, we don't know how long this is going to last, but we need to ensure that educators are highly supported and that we're working together with the resources and expertise that museums, nonprofits, higher ed, business, that everybody has, that we can really come together to wrap our arms around the students, but also wrap our arms around these educators and leaders that are really facing some challenging times right now.
All right.
Are you
ahead,
open
Matt.
with? Are you open to dealing with other school districts? Could people here in Michigan contact you for ideas and support?
Absolutely. So we're working with all school districts across the country. We're also working around the globe. And I think this is one of the pieces that's the most powerful, is the fact that we have the ability to learn with and from each other, not just within our own community, but from communities all over. So we would welcome, you can always reach out, look at the STEMleadershipalliance.org website, or you can always reach me directly too, which is at Kelli, Kelli, list, List, Wells, WELLS, .klw@gmail.com.
Traditional four-year students love Lawrence Technological University's thriving campus life, but LTU has always met non-traditional students' needs too. Lawrence Tech offers over 100 degree and certificate programs that can get adult students started or back on track. And most of our classes are conveniently offered evenings at our beautiful Southfield campus or online, so you can balance your social, family, and work life even while you power up your career. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.